Right.
Hey, everybody. For those of you joining in this evening, first and foremost, happy almost New Year. And thanks for tuning in to our last interview of the year 2020 with Mr. Weston Popichak. We will talk a lot about his background and talk about our African painted dog projects that we're doing here at Global Conservation Force. But once again, my name is Lauren. I am the Education Project Coordinator. Mike is not here tonight with us, but myself and Weston will be talking about some of the African painted dog projects that we're working on this past year and this upcoming year. If you guys cannot stay with us, because I know it is a pretty busy night, we will be uploading these videos onto all of our social media platforms, so you guys can tune in whenever. But throughout the duration of our interview today, please feel free to send us questions throughout our little comment box on Facebook and whatnot, and we will get to them as we can. But without further ado, Weston, take it away. How did you get started with African painted dogs and GCF? Tell us about your background a little bit.
Hey, folks. Thanks for having me. To go into a little bit of the start of all this, I have worked with exotic animals now for probably about 13 years or so overall, and always loved the conservation efforts that have been ongoing. And probably about 4 years ago, I started spending some time hanging out with Mike Veal, who's the CEO and president of Global Conservation Force. And not long after that, we actually moved in together and we're roommates. And it was pretty easy for us to sort of transition into just me helping out with his nonprofit here and there. And I think, yeah, about probably early 2017 is when I officially kind of joined on with Global Conservation Force. And I've always been an avid runner. I run marathons and ultra marathons, and I love calisthenics, which is basically body weight exercises, and being able to get a really good workout from just calisthenics, what you have around you. And so those two things, animals, conservation, and fitness, Mike had a use for. So with that, my position moved from being a conservation officer, just kind of helping out wherever I could, to being the painted dog project coordinator, as well as a fitness, nutrition, and conditioning instructor for anti poaching rangers. So it's been a cool time, and had a lot of cool opportunities.
Yeah, and it works out really organically and super well with all of our anti-poaching unit trainings that you've helped out with out in the field. And symbolically with the African painted dog, I mean, they're marathon runners, as some of you guys might know, and great team workers. So I'm sure that was part of what drew you to want to be the coordinator and voice for African painted dogs.
Yeah, we have really great projects going on with pangolin and giraffe and elephant and rhino, and a few other species as well. And really, the idea is to help all of the animals that are in a particular habitat. But we do have our iconic species at GCF that we really have a lot of great projects going on with. And I started to think about, how cool African wild dogs or African painted dogs are. You may hear those two names kind of synonymously. And as a endurance runner, they are sort of the one of the cool animals, one of the coolest animals in the animal kingdom when it comes to like endurance running. They can run like 35 miles an hour for about 3 miles. Typically, they have huge territories, sometimes even up to upwards of over 1,000 kilometers. And so it almost gives the appearance that they're kind of nomadic in a way, because they have these huge territories. And in a particular day, some packs will move as much as 50 kilometers a day, which is, just over 30 miles. So they are an animal that aspires, I think, a lot of runners, and definitely me. And so that was a very cool animal, and especially with them, unfortunately, being an endangered species as well, they're an animal that can always use more help in the conservation efforts.
Yeah, absolutely. And they're one of the most endangered carnivores, in my understanding, right, in South Africa. So it became pretty easy for us to choose African painted dogs to add onto our project list, especially since you had mentioned they're nomadic. They cover quite a bit of ground, especially the ground that covers, all of our other endangered animals like elephants, rhinos, pangolins, giraffes, and whatnot. So it was a great overarching species to just add on. Can you talk a little bit as to why we decided to choose African painted dogs? What problems they're facing in the wild? I mean, we've heard a lot about elephants and pangolins and rhinos and why they're poached and trafficked. But what about African painted dogs? We might not know what is targeting them out in the wild and why their numbers are declining.
Yeah, so painted dogs have kind of a fairly unique situation. They are not the target with poachers and poaching snares. However, they are the unfortunate victim.
Mm-hmm.
When poaching snares are set out, typically they're set out to catch just about anything and everything. So painted dogs will get caught up in snares, and you'll have fatalities from that. You also have historically, a fair amount of persecution from farmers. So the belief that all these painted dogs or wild dogs are attacking their livestock, when in reality, some really great conservationists out in Zimbabwe gathered data to show that it's far less than I believe it's 1%. So just kind of a false accusation, unfortunately, and it's another reason why it's important to collect your data and spread it around, publish it. So that, as well as you have situations where, unfortunately, local domestic dogs can actually spread things like parvo virus and rabies to the wild painted dog pack populations and decimate them, really. So you have that. I know it would be important for me to mention that, unfortunately, traffic, streets and speeding cars are also a huge part of that. And I know there's a conservationist in particular in Zimbabwe that would want me to mention that. There's unfortunately people on the road that aren't paying attention to these wonderful creatures that are either crossing over the street or, actually, in painted dog's case, sometimes actually using it as a blockade or a stopping point for any prey that's going to try and run out into a clearing. They actually try and block them off. So unfortunately, that is another situation. And so, like you said, the painted dog packs travel across huge territories that cross over with a lot of other species. They are unique in that typically GPS collaring is very valuable with the conservation and research efforts with their species, because good luck trying to follow them day in and day out unless you have something like that. And with that, when there are collared individuals, the conservationists that are monitoring them are able to actually get a head start in whether they need to have a combined effort with the community in that area to keep those packs or those individuals safe. There's been huge progress in terms of local communities actually going from seeing the painted dog as a possible danger to being sort of like a symbolic conservation story and a point of pride for their communities.
Yeah, absolutely. So education and awareness is a huge part of what we do. It works with painted dogs as well, just simply teaching people about why it is important to watch for speed limits or to watch out for snares. Something that's pretty cool that we do with the communities out there is we work with the anti-poaching units that collect the snare wire that they might find on their patrols. Snare wire that potentially a lot of our animals that we focus on could get stuck in, including painted dogs, and they'll create art out of it, which is pretty cool. You guys might not be able to see this very well, but it's a little snare wire, little figurine of an African painted dog, and the proceeds for a lot of these art pieces go right back into the community. So it's a more sustainable way of living for these communities that are right in the epicenter of where African painted dogs are found, which is a pretty cool project too. Try to turn that around. Mm-hmm. I know you're working with a couple cool people out there, including the very famous Dr. Greg Rasmussen. Can you talk a little bit about him and his passion and how you guys got acquainted?
Yeah, so when I kind of got started up with the Painted Dog project for GCF, I started looking at some collaborators that we already have over in different African countries, but there's obviously a few people that have been doing this for decades, and have decade-long studies, as well as conservation efforts and community relations, which is the big one. So Dr. Greg Rasmussen is one of those individuals that stands out. He started Painted Dog Conservation organization in Zimbabwe that basically said, hey, we need to do something about this endangered species. Nobody's really doing anything about this. And so for Zimbabwe, he really spearheaded the start of the conservation effort for that species. And he's made a huge, huge turnaround in terms of population numbers. He's since moved on to start even another organization, and that is Painted Dog Research Trust. And we actually work with both. With Painted Dog Conservation, we were able to help out by actually sending out a few of our instructors. Our field medic instructor, Chris Larson, who you may have tuned in for his talk, he was able to take their whole staff of anti-poaching rangers through a course on being able to take care of one another if somebody gets injured, or take care of yourself. Really the important stuff in terms of if you come across any type of danger with a potential suspect, with even wildlife, or just stuff happens out there in the bush, and if you can take care of yourself, you have a much better chance of making it out of tricky situations. Mm-hmm. And then Marty Kimball, who's our hand-to-hand combat instructor, he also ran that whole team of anti-poaching rangers at Painted Dog Conservation through a course. And in the event that anti-poaching rangers come across a potential suspect that is not at all willing to cooperate, and is in fact actually caught in the act, and is trying to harm the wildlife in the particular reserve that they monitor, these individuals are not left to just figure out how to arrest or detain this individual. They actually have the proper preparation to be able to handle a situation like that, and safely for the suspect or the confirmed individual, or keeping themselves safe as well. Mm-hmm. And so that was a cool way to start with Painted Dog Conservation. And then going back to Dr. Greg Rasmussen at Painted Dog Research Trust, he's got a really, really cool project going on where he's basically got this conservation focused school that he's going to open up. It's kind of like a fun, immersive camp, an eco camp really for the local community around the area that he's in Zimbabwe. And that right there is, if we look at the real change that's going to happen in the future, it's going to be on the education front. The anti-poaching rangers are what save tons of animals and buy you time. But if you're going to really get down into it and change things for the future, we really need to get everyone on board with conserving and saving the wildlife that needs it most, of course, but really preserving all habitat. And so he's got that in the bag. I mean, there's no need for us to go reinvent something that he's already got going in that part of Zimbabwe. So we wanted to support his building of that project. He's working on developing and building a new, really cool program for the local community. And so we've been able to actually do a bit of fundraising for his. And I shouldn't say a bit, because a lot of GCF supporters have really stepped up and helped us out with that. We actually ended up donating about upwards of $8,000 towards that education effort that he's got there.
Yeah. Awesome.
Yeah.
Not talking about reinventing the wheel and whatnot. Greg Rasmussen had a really great activity book that he was using for education programs like his Future Eco Camp. So we helped him revamp that and sent it off to him, which is pretty exciting to do because he had a lot of great information, being one of the primary sources of information and research out in the field. But you also did a lot of fundraising here. We were just talking about how much you raised, but how exactly did you do that? It was pretty innovative and very physical, I would say.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I mean, what can I say? Like our whole team at GCF it's a very diverse crew with a lot of different skill sets, but also a lot of really great ideas in terms of, we've come up with a wide variety of different stuff to get people on this side engaged and on board. So in terms of just Painted Dog fundraisers, Painted Dog project fundraisers, I started with painting for painted dogs, which I'm sure some of you viewing right now were some awesome support for us in that event, as well as some of the other painting events that we've held, and that was basically an instructor-led painting class, and you're painting a painted dog on canvas. You're having some wine, having a good time, and so there was that, a couple years back, and then we had a dog walk for a cause where we invited people out to actually just kind of go on a big dog walk around Lake Miramar, and offer them a little bit of like aid stations and goodie bags and different stuff like that for coming out and having a nice day in the sun with the pups. And then from there, I think my favorite event so far has been the Painted Dog 5K, 10K. Just from a running standpoint, it's always been it's been cool to enjoy races and even be a part of aid stations. But this has been my first time actually directing a race, and it's been a really cool experience. And I'm lucky to have all the volunteers that have come out to help so far with that. The first year was at Guajome Regional Park in Oceanside, and I plan to keep it there. This year it was also going to be scheduled to be held there, but unfortunately with COVID coming around, everybody had to adapt to that, and rightfully so. So we made sure that we kept the fundraising going with turning it into a virtual event. And that's something that we had the first year is a virtual and an in-person event for the painted dog lovers in other states and in other countries. It's an opportunity for you to pitch in a little bit towards a conservation effort for severely endangered species, but also go out there, get some exercise, and we end up sending a pretty cool goodie bag that we got going of snacks, as well as a Painted Dog 5K, 10K t-shirt. And so with that, next year, keep an eye out. I think I'm going to push it a little further into 2021, just because I would really love to get it back to being an in-person event. If it can't happen, it can't happen. We'll do another virtual race, but I would love to see everybody come out. That first year was really cool. We had a lot of people come out and run a really great race, and I think they enjoyed it quite a lot. So I'm thinking about late August this year, just so you guys got the sneak peek here. You heard it here first. Late August, which is World Painted Dog Day anyway, is in late August. So there's that, and then the hopes that hopefully that's far enough out that we'll have be in a good place in terms of COVID and being able to get back out there on the trail and then have a good race.
Yeah, it was very fulfilling to see everybody come out. It's very moving. Everyone want to be that physical. So get ready for the next year. You guys have plenty of time. Weston, when it comes to fulfilling, experiences with you, especially since you've been out to Africa a couple times for either gear drops or anti-poaching unit training, what do you think are some of the things that have stood out to you in your coordinator positions?
I would have to say seeing pangolin is,
Yeah.
I feel like that one you sort of have to mention, because even some great dedicated rangers out in certain parts of different countries in Africa, as many hours as they're out on patrol, that some of them have not even seen a pangolin. It's a cool animal that you may or you may not see. There's not a ton of them out there, and they're usually not just right out there in the middle in the open for you to see them. Yeah, when I was out in Namibia, we helped out with a great nonprofit organization out there that actually does pangolin rehabilitation. And another cool part of that memory was actually building crates for them. So I went out there with kind of a general design on building some transportation crates in case this team that we collaborate with, if they needed to pick up any pangolins that were injured and needed to be rehabilitated, law enforcement contacts them when they need a rehabilitator for pangolins, and that team does a great job. And so something we had the chance to provide them was actually building them a couple new crates so that they could actually transport these animals with a lot of ease and be able to carry them safely. And so that was a cool thing. I think I stayed up all night. I remember pulling an all-nighter, and it was totally worth it. But I was out there in the middle of the moonlight working on these crates, and it was a awesome time. And then I mean, every time every time I'm out there, I think there's just something really cool. Etosha National Park in Namibia is great, but then moving on to South Africa, um, I mean, going going into fitness instructing with Karika Reserve in South Africa was super cool. That's a great bunch of dedicated rangers there that are very promising team, and I mean they're great, and it was cool to spend some time with them as well as run them through some improvements or some tips that they can apply in terms of getting the most out of their workouts, the most out of their nutrition, because ideally to some maybe nutrition and fitness isn't a huge necessity for anti-poaching rangers, but in my mind, um, you know when some of these rangers are putting their life on the line and they're out there in really dangerous situations, I would like their body to be able to do what they want their body to do in those dangerous moments, and be able to be strong, fast, and be able to move and do what they need to do in order to keep themselves safe. So, maybe stuff like that sometimes makes the difference. And that team was super receptive, and we had a lot of really good lessons as well as workouts that we got in, and we also had local soccer coaches come out for that course as well, which is super cool. Any time we get an opportunity to kind of expand out and build even more relationships with the local community and offer up some free stuff, it's always a cool bonus. So I would say that. One more would be I had the opportunity, having a animal trainer background. I had a cool opportunity to help out with a rhino hippo orphanage in developing a training program. So the staff there just awesome, incredibly dedicated, wonderful staff. But something that maybe hasn't really had as much time or sight there is animal training, and where you can apply it, whether it's hands on or hands off. Getting some good positive reinforcement, operant conditioning training in there to make little things that are very important um, much easier. Like even just getting a weight on your calves in case you need to monitor their weights for bottles, the quantity that you need to put in bottles, as well as the type of formula that you're going to give them. So having them step onto a scale voluntarily, you can get a great weight, as well as even things like getting a voluntary blood draw. That can always give you a lot of information on internal health as well. So um, that was a really cool process. I think it's fun to go through and kind of teach other people how to do positive reinforcement training, because once it clicks and they get it, I think they kind of take it and run with it, and it's a pretty fun thing. And you see how much it's a benefit to the care professionals there, as well as the animals themselves. Having it all be on a voluntary basis and low stress, really good stuff.
Yeah, definitely a better lifestyle for everybody involved, animals and people. That's one thing that I love about GCF is the grassroots approach that we have. Whether it's training the animals with positive reinforcement, if it's training APU units and our rangers how to better take care of themselves while they're out there, or education for those lifelong improvements, which is pretty cool. You were talking about your training with the anti-poaching units. I remember Mike talking about how overwhelming it could be sometimes with everybody reaching out to him for help, because he is a great asset. And GCF has, tried to help so many rangers and APUs out there. But, oftentimes when they ask for that big item, like a Jeep for patrolling, we won't always have the funds readily available for that. But something that we can do in the meantime is teach them from the ground up how to support themselves. We'll provide them with boots, make sure that they're in good standing before we give them these items so that they can better protect themselves. Because once they understand how to, do these solid foundationals, hopefully they'll be better at doing their jobs in the future for their safety and whatnot. So it's pretty cool the way that we approach our multifaceted projects out in Africa and abroad.
Yeah, I mean that's really a huge part of why Mike started all of it
Yeah.
was really, he'd gone out there and done anti-poaching and saw the need to really support anti-poaching rangers. I mean, like I said, the education, the socioeconomic solutions, huge part of it, but also anti-poaching rangers save hundreds and hundreds of thousands of animals,
And we
and
need to
they're
protect
kind of
them. Mhm.
an unsung hero. I mean, there's not a lot of focus on them all the time, and they're out there patrolling for 12, 14 hours a day sometimes, sleeping out in the bush and continuing on a patrol, depending on what reserve they're on. And so, these people are at the spear point in terms of taking on the challenge to save wildlife. And with that, Mike, started with just getting gear out there. There's some units where, they sometimes it's stuff like backpacks, boots, flashlights, knives, stuff like that that you might need, or even just camping gear that makes a huge difference in comfort as well as being able to cover more ground. And so offering that, camelbacks, different stuff like that. And then from there kind of evolving into offering ranger training.
Mhm.
Not all units have the ability to get an instructor out there for some of those courses that I was mentioning before, like hand-to-hand combat in self-defense or field medic, or in this case we're kind of adding something new, and that's fitness, or strength, nutrition, and conditioning. So making these guys and girls the tip top, best condition they can be to do what they want to do when they're out there on patrol.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so it's pretty neat how Mike approaches these issues. Sorry, that was my dog. So Weston, when it comes to African painted dogs and the challenges that they face because it's so broad, when it comes to snare wires and whatnot, what are some things that people can do at home or locally that you think could make a difference for painted dogs?
Well, I think obviously, I think we're kind of a bridge for a lot of people, and the ability to any small donations that people are able to help us out with, we can go and put onto the other side of helping rangers that are protecting the actual grounds that painted dogs are passing through, and doing snare removal, having community and education efforts on the other side as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that you can do. So I mean, if you just look at our website, we always provide new ways in which you can support either our rangers or specific projects, specific animals that might be inspirations to you. But I had mentioned that snare wire art, whether you get it from us at GCF or if you get it from any other of our partners, the communities that we work with out there, it still makes a difference. The snare wire, was removed from that environment and it's saving countless lives. So it's a great talking piece as well. Just another thing that you can do at home. All of our in-person, when we can, events and fundraisers that we host, so you can meet us and make your mark. We'll always be here. Conservation is not ending. Our fundraisers don't end. They just might be more viral. I mean, more online and whatnot. But we'll keep you posted in ways that you can help. Now, on to the impact that we're making with painted dogs, since it is one of our newer projects that we've been adding to our GCF, line of animals. What are some things that we're working on for 2021 or that you're looking forward to?
Yeah, so mentioning, having some instructor courses with painted dog conservation, and helping out with the development of the school or the eco camp with Painted Dog Research Trust. We are starting to branch out more into what we can do with some smaller groups here and there, in terms of whether we can provide some of our canine units to learn how to track painted dogs and be useful to the rangers that are in charge of territories that have painted dogs on them. That's something that we're moving into. We're also looking at what we can do in assistance of GPS collars, because like I said, that's something that can really make all the difference when conservationists or rangers need to find individuals. It saves so much time, obviously. um, and then anything involving possible relocations we're open to. So Sometimes in some areas, the painted dog populations have dwindled, and in others they've grown really successfully. And in you'll find these territories that are ready actually with the community ready to be re-inhabited. And so it's a matter of how do you get those surplus painted dogs in one area and move them to a new inhabitable territory, because historically painted dogs actually were in basically all of sub-Saharan Africa. They are one of the most impressive species when you look at how far they ranged. A lot of other animals are kind of, fairly fixed to a certain type of habitat, but anything below sub-Saharan Africa, painted dogs were in 40 plus, countries in Africa there. And so they're an impressive species.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unfortunately, they're the last official count has them at 6,600 individuals. That's it in the world. A lot of conservationists would say it's probably quite a bit lower than that. And so when you look at how successful they are as a hunter, they catch about 85% of the prey that they chase after. It's about the highest or most successful hunter out there on the really African forest savanna anywhere.
Mm-hmm.
And really it's kind of when we allow them to do what they do naturally, they will do a good job. I mean, they evolved for it, and they are great hunters. It's a matter of us not hitting them with cars, not persecuting or doing anything to the dens that the pups are in, as well as being very aware of vaccinations with either painted dogs or the local domestic dogs. All those things are really, it's unfortunately our species that's had just a huge bad impact on them up until now. And I think a lot of really great conservationists and researchers are fighting back to really help communities, local communities, take a stand as well and get involved and preserve their local wildlife.
Yeah, we want to make people proud of the animals that are native to where they live, and by creating that kind of pride in the animals that are endemic to the area, hopefully the locals will want to conserve them more. Those locals are even more intel for us as conservationists and researchers, so we can better understand how we can protect them out there. You were hitting on a lot of good points as to what makes them so unique. And I know we're towards the end of our live talk, but can you talk about or a couple things that make them so unique as dogs and why they're so good at hunting and whatnot, and so nomadic and pretty successful with the human wildlife conflict?
There's a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
I don't want to get carried away, but one of the big ones is on a behavioral standpoint. They're kind of a interesting species in that they take care of their sick, their elderly, they're injured. You will see them actually feeding other adult painted dogs that are unable to hunt for themselves. So they're when you think of how tough it can be out in the African wilderness, and how many animals sometimes are just on their own. When something happens and you're injured, I mean, it's tough luck. But painted dogs, they really band together. I mean, they are like one of the best examples of family. Like they're competition for us in terms of like our cohesiveness in a family. They're very aware of each other and taking care of each other and coming up with kind of a role for each individual on responsibilities. And when you see them hunt together, that is like also a unique experience. I mean, a lot, I was mentioning their success rate when they hunt. When you look a lot at the other predators with lower percentages there, usually it's kind of they really go for it and they sprint out there, or they sneak up on a prey animal depending on how their style of hunt is. But if they miss that opportunity, usually they kind of drop out of the run there. Mm-hmm. And with painted dogs, you'll actually see them adjust a plan while they're hunting. So they work together, they actually communicate while they're hunting, and they can actually change a plan and kind of fix a mistake or a potential problem in the existing plan when they're out hunting. they're the only one of their genus, so they actually are kind of unique genetically too. The Lycone pictus is their scientific name, and they're the only canid in the Lycone genus. So they're kind of almost like an ancient old world type of dog, or really they're not a dog, they're not a wolf, they're kind of some mix of both in a way. And then on kind of a smaller level, if you were to look at real fine details, and again that genetic difference has shown up in a few traits, physical traits. They only have 4 toes on their front feet. They're the only canid like that. And then they also have kind of some extra curvature to their premolars. I believe it is their premolars. And they're the only ones with that as well, where it's kind of like a three-point tooth. And I think that's probably some good gripping teeth when hunting. But that's probably some of the cool ones that come to mind.
Yeah, they're pretty impressive. I know that in past, I guess, research articles, they've been called out for their giant ears as well. Those ears that are amazing for the changing of plans and hunting in the bush. They're just really inspirational dogs. Even between individuals, they have such unique coat patterns, from darker coat colorations to super light colorations, you name it. So it's kind of neat to see the differences between all the individuals, but always inspirational to see how much they really do work together to make sure that they all survive the best they can while they're out there. Pretty cool animals. You guys keep sending us questions if you have any. Please don't be shy. We'll keep talking about painted dogs. We can talk about them for hours. Weston, if there's anything else that you would like to share about your previous Africa visits, anything about painted dogs, anything that you're excited about, feel free to share.
More so on this side, actually, a fundraiser or an effort that I forgot to mention was actually having Dr. Rasmussen out here a couple of times, and we had presentations. So it's great to get education and conservation into the communities out there, but it's also it's important for everybody as a global population to kind of know what's going on in terms of what's happening to different habitats, what's happening to different ecosystems and the ecology in a particular region here or there. And so, we invited out Dr. Rasmussen, and once we had the presentation at Longship Brewery, who have been great to us. They're a great collaborator, as well as Wavelength in the second year that he came out here. We were able to set up a presentation at Wavelength Brewery in Vista, and they were great to us as well. And we hope to do it again when all of this is over, and everybody's safe to get back together. But obviously, we're not going to do anything until then. But he's if you've ever been in his presence, he's a heck of a awesome storyteller. And then just looking at decades long experience, he has so many just interesting, cool little stories or little things that have happened, or things that he's witnessed with all of his observations and data collection on painted dogs. And so, even just, having a beer with him after the presentation, which he was definitely up for, and hearing some more stories was a lot of fun. So,
you will fall in love with those dogs after talking to him, for sure. It's almost impossible not to fall in love with the dogs, seeing his passion.
Yeah. And, our expansion will be outside of, we really kind of started with helping with a few already really strong conservationists in Zimbabwe, but we're moving into helping efforts, in South Africa, which is where we already do a lot of efforts with our other species, as well as, looking at a few other countries that we'll be able to help out in. So, considering the circumstances, it's hard to give a for sure deadline of when and what comes next, but we're excited to get back out there and make an impact in a new area that may need to kind of start from the ground up.
Yeah, and guys, our fundraising and our updates and our interviews and keeping you guys posted on what we do will not stop. So stay tuned with us on all of our social media platforms, whether it's Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter. You know, we're going to continue to do our projects out with painted dogs and elephants, rhinos, penguins, giraffe, and we can't do it without you guys. So we really appreciate you guys tuning in and listening to all we have to say, joining in on our, end of the year fundraisers, because you guys are the reason why we can continue to make this happen, even with all the obstacles that we face this year, and hopefully we'll not face as many next year, but we're eternally grateful for you guys in 2020.
Absolutely.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, you know where to find us. If you have any other questions, feel free to reach out to us via email, Facebook, social media, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Other than that, have a wonderful new year. Thanks for tuning in. From myself, Lauren, and Weston, and we'll see you next time.
Happy New Year. We'll see you at the Painted Dog 5K, 10K. Start training.